If you commute from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, there's a new billboard that might catch your eye. The billboard on the Betsy Ross Bridge reads, "Now leaving New Jersey for Pennsylvania, just like Dr. Oz." This is an ad paid for by Fetterman for PA.
John Fetterman, the Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor and Democratic nominee for Senate, has been taking on Dr. Oz in a personal online campaign. Senior political correspondent at The Hill, Hanna Trudo, is here with us to discuss more. Hanna, welcome.
Thank you.
So what is unique about Fetterman's online war on Dr. Oz? What should we know about it?
Yeah, so John Fetterman is definitely trying to differentiate himself, not only from Dr. Oz, but I think from the way a lot of Democrats have previously sort of functioned online in some of these higher profile races. He's really taking on Oz in a way that's personal attacks. You mentioned the billboard. One of the biggest focuses has been that he doesn't reside in Pennsylvania, where of course the Senate race is being fought. But also he's doing it in a way that his aides and those around him argue is really authentic to him. And so that, of course, we've seen that strategy and that tactic deployed more often than not on the left. And, he doesn't really fit into that super left-wing category, but he is kind of pulling from that playbook. And so far, Democrats have found it to be effective. It's not something that seems to have alienated moderates, which is a big thing, obviously, in Pennsylvania as the general election comes closer. But really sort of using his authentic voice to hammer Oz in a lot of these sort of carpetbagging labels, but also just kind of jabs here and there, bringing celebrities, any way that he can really to kind of make a point that he's the better option for the state.
Yeah, one of his first kind of hits in the online posting game was getting Snooki, famously of Jersey Shore, to record a video about how Dr. Oz is from New Jersey. And that kind of thing went viral. You can use these websites where you can pay relatively small amounts of money to celebrities to record these things, and you can have an outsized impact as compared to how much money you would spend on a traditional TV ad. But I will say, although he has been embraced broadly by the left, and this approach has been embraced broadly, there has been some criticism. Nathan Robinson of Current Affairs magazine wrote an article recently that stirred up some controversy, in which he questioned whether or not the emphasis on, quote unquote, shit posting, as it were, detracted from the substantive, progressive economic message that he's running on. Is that a concern in your eyes? Is there a trade-off necessarily between these kinds of kind of online pop culture sort of efforts to get attention and people's belief that he's genuinely committed to changing their lives for the better?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a critique that's out there. I mean, one thing I pressed one of his senior advisors on is just that notion that you can be either funny and sort of push the envelope in a really overt way like he's doing, or you can be more serious and kind of attract people onto your side by talking about more substantive issues. And, their response, like I've heard in the past from some of these candidates, has been, we can quote unquote walk and chew gum at the same time. I think for right now, that seems to be effective. That seems to be the case. I mean, he is up by double digits, I think 11 points or something like that in the latest Fox News poll that just came out. So it's the do no harm component of this seems to be working for him right now. But I do think, to your point, there's a critique out there that, you don't want to veer too much into this sort of, like you said, the, quote unquote shit posting category, because then you just look sort of either childish or I've heard some Democrats say, that appears to be more like Trump. And so that's certainly something that some of these candidates don't want to appear to be. So I think it is a balancing act. Obviously one candidate and lawmaker who does that sort of dance really effectively, obviously, is AOC. She attacks Republicans when necessary on a lot of issues, but she's also, serious about a lot of the things she posts. And I don't know if it's a direct ratio type of thing, but I think that there is a balance, to it, especially in some of these tighter competitive races.
Republicans are very frustrated with Dr. Oz, from my understanding, that they think he's not campaigning effectively, if at all. He's actually spent significant time not in the state, even campaigning. So I think that's part of the reason the attempts by Fetterman to paint him as, not from the state, et cetera, are landing, because he's doing a very bad. He's actually literally not there a lot of the time. How do you see this race developing over the next couple weeks as we head into the actual election?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that that Fetterman's team pointed out to me is that even though they are so far ahead, and that, like you said, Oz is considered even by his own party to be a really historically bad candidate and just really not ready for prime time, as kind of funny as that is for a reality star. But the Fetterman campaign is nervous that, it's not going to be such a wide margin as these things tend to not be. I mean, it could be a half a point in the end. It could be 1 point in the end. So I think we might start to see a pivot from the Oz folks. They declined, to comment for this piece, but I think from what we've kind of gathered by his public statements is that there might be more of an emphasis on his time really in the state. It seems kind of like bare minimum stuff towards the last leg here, to spend time in the place that you're actually running to represent. But I think, the Fetterman folks are certainly not looking to sort of scale back any of those carpetbagging attacks. And so I think, at the bare minimum, the Oz camp is trying to kind of negotiate how they spend their time around that. And knowing full well, I had one Republican strategist simply, say to me for this piece, if Oz wasn't such a bad candidate, if he hadn't, kind of blown his shot thus far, it would be a more competitive race this whole time. But that's just not how it's shaping up to be so far.
Yeah, well, while Dr. Oz is often literally not in the state, Fetterman has himself been sidelined by his own health issues. How has that been playing into this race, and perhaps a strategy to be so online?
Yeah, that's a really interesting component of this. I think back to, when COVID first happened, it was sort of the tail end of the presidential election, and we saw the candidates go more online, more Zoom, more Instagram and Twitter and that kind of stuff, because they were sidelined in their own way. So I'm seeing kind of parallels between the last half of the general election for the presidential between Biden and Trump and what's happening now with Fetterman. He's taken himself off the trail for a few weeks after suffering that stroke. He's turned his operation online. And, like I said, it seems to be working so far. It was really hard for the Biden folks to navigate, but he's, a very different kind of candidate. And, folks in his inner circle did tell me that this is kind of a natural approach for him. He likes to be online. He writes his tweets himself. He very rarely, runs things up the ladder, as is often done in Democratic social media strategy. And so this is kind of just a natural extension of, I think, his personality that seems to coincide, at least for the time being, well with what he went through health-wise.
Well, at a White House press conference yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre got the question, is Joe Biden having one of the best weeks of his administration precisely because he's out with COVID and not on camera the same way that he was in the proverbial basement through so much of the pandemic? And she kind of pushed back against that maybe there's something to be said for just kind of keeping a low profile and coasting to a victory here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As somebody who covered the Biden campaign throughout the entire election, I mean, I remember vividly when those gaffes happened on the campaign trail. At the time during the primary, there were only a handful of voters sometimes to see them when he wasn't doing as well. But when he took himself off the trail, it ebbed and flowed. He did a little bit better at points when he was kind of constrained to the basement, and then he also towards the end, when he became the nominee, people did want to see him more. So I think it can go both ways. But for somebody like Biden, who is more gaffe prone or has a tendency to really put his foot in his mouth depending on the subject that he's talking about, I think that the good week that he's having right now, they should be sort of thankful for that and kind of keep to the strategy that they're doing for the time being.
Well, Hanna, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And stay tuned for more Rising right after this.